Welcome back to This Was Supposed to Be Easy, your go-to podcast for connection, joy, and a good dose of laughter.
Hosted by two friends who've seen enough of life to know that it's never as simple as it sounds.
Or looks.
Each conversation celebrates the diverse journeys we travel, the moments of bravery, the strength we didn't know we had, and the joy we find along the way.
Because let's be honest, life is full of things that were supposed to be easy, but turned out to be harder.
And definitely funnier.
Than we thought. This is Amy.
And this is Cheryl. And if it were easy, we wouldn't be here.
Hi, everybody. I am super excited because this week we are actually kind of going to preemptively know that we are recording a two-parter. And so to start with this, we are going to talk about giving and getting feedback. Now, this is something that is really important to me, but I see it so often. And so we were talking about maybe we would record it as one and giving, getting, but the more we kind of started mapping it out, we realized that there was definitely enough information, and it takes two very different skill sets to give feedback and to get feedback, and both are important. And so for this episode, we are going to start talking about giving feedback for this first episode. And I think that giving feedback is a skill that every person needs to learn. I think getting feedback is also a skill everybody needs to learn. But again, where I said it's two separate things. And so I know in my own life, I am constantly giving feedback. And in that way, as a mom and supporting my children, I am giving feedback on their activities, how they did somewhere, even when they were younger, and we would go to a family reunion and how they behaved at the family. Like, I look at feedback as a very kind of neutral thing. And so when I'm thinking about feedback in general, it's kind of up to the person who's receiving it to decide what it is they want to do with it. But that's where I think, like, you have to, when giving it, you have to really think about who you are and the headspace you're in to be able to give it and give it well.
Right. Well, and as you say that, I just think about our moods.
Yes.
Right? You know, if I'm already stressed or if I'm already grouchy, what comes out of my mouth could be a lot sharper. That's why I think about, talking about giving feedback and receiving feedback. The way I give feedback or information at all is definitely going to influence how someone receives it. So, to just think about each time we speak to someone, and if it's about their efforts or their behaviors or what's expected of someone, even that, like you said, preemptive sort of, like, here's what we're about to do, here are some expectations. That's feedback, right?
It is. And so let's talk about, in some ways and roles within our life, that we are the one giving feedback to someone. So I know, as we were kind of talking about this, you are a faculty member. You
Yes.
have students that you are grading their performance in school. So you are often giving feedback in that way.
Yes, yes. And I'll stop you just for a quick second to say even how I've done that over time has clearly and obviously changed. But I think that has to do with always wanting to learn more and think about how we do something. And I'm sort of in a phase right now as a professor where much of the content that I'm engaging students with is it's less about I'm going to teach you this and I want you to spit it back at me, and then I'm going to critique whether we're on the same page or not, right? Or even critique. I'm sort of also not in a space where I focus on your grammar and your punctuation, and that's different than how I was quite a few years ago. And people can have a lot of opinions about that, right? But the way that I give feedback now really focuses in on I want to see that you've engaged in the process of thinking, right? So whatever the topic is that we're exploring, were you curious about it? What did that feel like for you, or what did that look like for you, which is very different than, are you spitting something back at me that follows these 3 steps and this rule and that rule, and so right now my feedback almost feels a bit more like coaching in a way, because I might be asking them questions or talking about what I loved about a certain topic, and that feels really different.
Yeah, I can definitely see that. I know for myself, kind of in the same vein, as I've mentioned before, I'm a grad student right now, and I would say that the majority of my assignments are in some type of discussion board format where I'm providing feedback to my classmates on their thought pattern, like their projects, that type of information. Where I've noticed kind of something that's a trend now that I'm wondering if maybe we can touch on a little bit too is AI generated feedback. And the reason I think about this, and it's kind of important to, I feel like AI feedback hits different. And I know we're talking about giving it over getting it, and we can talk about this again in the getting it one, but giving it, I feel like AI generated feedback is great for the feedback you're no longer giving, the grammar, those types of things.
Mhm.
When it's based around thought, that makes it a little bit trickier. And so I also think about, like, one of my children were talking about how they were receiving feedback from one of their teachers, instructors, and they said, "I swear every piece of feedback I've gotten up until this point was AI generated. I don't actually think they read anything that I wrote."
Uh-huh.
And they were upset by it.
Yeah, yeah. I have never used AI generated feedback, but I will fully and transparently admit that if I know my students have read a very specific piece of material, I might type out a piece of feedback that really touches on the content from that material and use almost the same kind of feedback for every student in the
Mhm.
class, right? Because I just really want to emphasize this one thing that we all probably hopefully read versus what they gave me from their work. But I do have a colleague that I've had a few conversations with because they use AI feedback, and I hadn't even contemplated that. I didn't even realize that was a thing, and they were telling me that there was a student responding to them via email saying, "Stop giving me AI feedback. You don't even read my materials." And what they said to me was, I am using AI for the feedback, but I have very carefully trained AI to represent my voice, to know what I'm looking for in this particular assignment. And I really couldn't even engage in that part of the conversation because I hadn't thought about that before and what that means in terms of feedback. And my first thought is, how transparent are you with the people receiving the feedback? And do you need to be? And then my second thought was, if I suspect for myself, if I use AI feedback more and more, or at all, because I don't yet, and I say yet because I don't know the
Right.
future, will that rob my ability to participate verbally in an exchange where my thoughts and feedback are required if I start sending that process to AI more and more?
That is really interesting. It makes me wonder if the first part of the assignment then might be, or before completion, or before submission, if a student wants to, send this through AI
Mm.
with the prompt of, please review this critically as an instructor. Here's the rubric. This is what they're looking for. What score and what feedback might you automatically give me?
Mm,
So then they might have that feedback already. So then when they see you, or when the material comes to you, you are able to give them the human feedback.
interesting.
And so they already have kind
Yeah.
of both.
You build it into the steps
Right.
the process. And then again, I mean, for me, I'm like, the process is what matters anyway, right?
Right.
That's where the learning isn't really. There's a bit that takes place if I'm offering specific feedback, which let's talk about specific feedback too.
Yes.
If you build in round one is you've already gotten feedback from AI and made those modifications before you send it to me, that, that could be a good use.
Well, and here's something that I wonder about with it as well. So, the reason I even was kind of thinking about giving and getting feedback. So, the program that I'm in is IO psychology, the psychology of work. And so, we were having a discussion in class about individuals that use AI to give feedback to their employees. Like, so if you think about like a 360 review or something like that, you have somebody did a great big project. And if you only used AI feedback, how does that impact the relationship between the employee and the employer? And as so many organizations are going to more AI generated feedback that way, I think, because I'm a relationship person, like that is something that I think we also have to talk about when giving feedback. But I'm such a relationship person that if I just gave you my blood, sweat, and tears in the form of this project for your organization that you're working for, like, I want real feedback. I
Mhm.
and I also will even take it a step further because if I'm gonna scroll for a second, because one question I would also have is what is worse or better, AI generated feedback or a simple good job attaboy? Where, like, we know from early childhood, you don't say good job because it's so generic.
Amy, I'm taking notes as we're talking, and I've already written good job and specific on my
Yes,
notes because we
yeah.
have to talk about
We
that,
do,
right?
we have to, we can't have this conversation without. So looking at that from I remember I had a faculty member early on who I got a one sentence, "Attaboy, you seem like a great scholar." Like, nothing that at all implied they cared about me, they cared about my work, they were interested and invested in my learning. It was as generic could be.
Mhm.
I've had other faculty that have given me a half a page of feedback, but I don't think it was anything that they wrote themselves. And then I've had other faculty members who have absolutely read what I wrote and gave me feedback on my specific contribution. I felt more connected to the third party than one or two every time
Yeah.
over.
I mean, we aren't recording an episode about being a professor and giving
No.
feedback, right? But what you just said reminded me of work we've done together with our friend Holly, right? Like we've gone out together and we've done several keynotes and workshops on being joyful as a leader.
Yes.
And then taken that and done additional work with being joyful as an educator. And what does that look like? And one of the most important pieces is the trust,
Yes.
right? And as a part of trust, you touch on investing in the long term, investing in the relationship. And I mean, there's a crisis right now in early childhood, which is where we both work, where we're losing the educators, we're losing the childcare providers because there's burnout. There's a lot of burnout. So if you're a leader in an organization like that, if you're a leader in a business or a corporate or in a family or whatever that leadership role looks like, it's essential that there's trust. And I think a lot of that trust comes in that reciprocal relationship piece. And I think that's probably why I was thinking about that, maintaining the skill of dialogue,
Yeah.
right? Like you have to maintain that skill of I'm actually paying attention
Mhm.
to your effort. I'm paying attention to the process you're engaging in, not because I want to micromanage you, because
Right.
to me, micromanage means I don't trust you,
Right.
right?
Yeah, absolutely.
But I'm paying attention to what you're doing and the effort that you're putting in, and myself am working to be curious longer,
Mhm.
right? To be asking you the kind of questions that show you that I'm not judging what you've done unless I need to, right? But I'm not asking you this question to monitor your minutes invested and what you've done with your day.
Right.
I'm asking them out of genuine curiosity, or even asking them to help you think more about what you're doing and where it might go next. And, that coaching piece jumps in there, right? But it's about showing others that you care
Mhm.
and that you are paying attention and that you value what they're doing. I guess when you propose the topic of feedback, and a lot of those things came to mind, right? Like, if I'm giving feedback that shows that you matter, your work matters, and I'm noticing what you're doing because I'm pointing it out.
Mhm.
That's very different than, it's my job to respond to this thing. So I'm gonna, just either, give you something super quick and shallow. Good job. Doesn't mean I noticed a thing,
Mhm.
or bad job. It's all wrong. Well, how did they get that far and have it be all wrong? Like, where were you in the process, as a team member?
I think that is a great point. My thought on giving feedback in and I was actually having a conversation about this the other day. If there is a right or wrong way of doing something,
Mhm.
like, so there is a measurable right or wrong way. Driving, good example.
Oh, yeah.
Like there is a right way
There
to
might
drive.
be
Isn't
some
it
flexibility
right?
in
Right, a
how it
little
happens, but
bit.
there are definitely rules of the road, yes.
Right. But first day of showing up to work, those
Mm,
types of things. If there is a right or wrong way to do something, I believe if you care about me, you will tell me what I got right and what I got wrong so I can do the right thing again
mhm,
and correct the wrong.
mhm,
And I look at that as you care about me. You
mhm,
care about my
mhm,
success. And so I think about it from a supervisor position of, yeah, I want feedback because if there is a right or wrong way, like, I feel like you can't gatekeep the secret of the right way of doing it
mhm,
and watching someone actively fail. But I also think then the first time you give feedback, and this was actually a Mel Robbins thing that I've taken heart and have taught many times over, there is a way to say, "This is what I owe that I contributed to you maybe not having all the information.
yes.
This is, I recognize I might not have told you that we start pretty promptly at 8 o'clock,
Yeah,
and you're walking in here every day at 8:15, and everybody else is kind of waiting on you.
yeah,
And so it's really important you're here at 8."
yeah.
Yeah.
I'm just gonna throw a little snippet out there.
Mhm.
Relevant, we'll figure out if it is or not. I just returned from a trip to Italy with, when you're leading a group, there are spaces and moments for freedom and flexibility. And then there are points in time where the taxi arrived. The train will leave the station, right? Like
Yes.
like when we say we're walking out of the building at this time, we mean it.
Mhm.
And I had this interesting conversation more than a week into the trip. I was in a taxi with a group, and someone asked me what time tomorrow, and I said we're leaving the lobby at this time. And one of the people in the back seat said to another person in the back seat, "That means for you it's this time." And she gave a time 15 minutes earlier. And then they had this conversation, and, that was being given a different time, sort of said, I grew up in a different culture. And in my culture, 10 minutes late is on time. 15 minutes late is late. But if I'm in the 10-minute window, I'm on time. And that was really important for me to hear because that person was also probably the most vocally joyful, appreciative person in the group. Just everything was so, magical and music and rainbows and so I really didn't want to get trapped in this mindset of, oh, they're always late, they're never listening, they're whatever, when they brought so much joy to the experience. And so it was just really a good moment to let my curiosity just eavesdrop, right?
Yeah.
On that backseat conversation to hear them say, well, in my culture, 10 minutes late is on time. And it's like, okay, now I have something to work with, right?
Right.
That doesn't have to be a negative to you or something that makes you feel bad about the way you're showing up. It's like, now I have some information that can influence maybe the time I tell the whole group, that we're going to leave or that, they need to be ready.
That's interesting. The negativity part is something that I am always curious about with feedback. One of the things that I had to learn when giving feedback, in fact, it was a helpful reminder that I was even doing this because I didn't realize it a couple years ago, but now I feel like I'm hyper aware to it. And it was that in this specific situation, my one of my children had done something positive. They had done a really good thing, but there were a couple of tweaks that could have made it better. And I gave them that kind of the feedback when I really should have just been celebrating that they did the hard thing.
Mm,
And so it made me think about too when to give feedback.
timing.
Timing is everything. And so it's when to give feedback of you did the hard thing. Like you finished the project. You wrote the paper. You participated in the sporting event. You played the game.
You made
You
the call, you made
right.
the appointment.
Yes,
Yep.
all those things. Like, yes, you did it. And then when is the time to say we should probably talk about and is this my role?
Mm,
In that I care about you, I want this, and you want feedback from me. And now I would also say certain roles, supervisor, employee, faculty member, teacher, student, there are certain roles that call for giving and getting feedback. They just are. Then there are other roles in life that might not unless asked for. And so that might also be something. Like if you and I are friends and I trust you, I'm going to probably say majority of the time, "Hey, how did I do with that? Like, you just watched me speak in front of a group of people. How was that?
mhm.
Like, do you have any feedback? Because we're gonna do it again some other time. Like, should I slow my pacing? Should I do this?" Like, that type of thing. But that also then goes to there are other people that I would not ask for their
Exactly.
feedback.
Like,
I
I
wouldn't.
wanna be better. You're my friend, you just watched this. Tell me something, if you notice something that
Right.
could make me better. Very different from a different person who might critique when unasked for and has no right, I guess, in some ways to offer that.
Right. A colleague of mine and I, we were just talking. So one of our roles is we plan conferences, as you well know. And with one of the conferences, we were realizing that people were giving feedback in real time to things that we could not change.
Mm,
And so we have actually said, like next year we want to have a parking lot. So if there is we want the feedback. Like
mhm.
it's important that we do the best job that we can. Like what is something I can do to impact this experience in the next 3 minutes? Give it to me right now. Like if I can fix this in 3 minutes, then I want to absolutely do that. If this is going to need to be impact or changed in the planning period for next year,
Mhm.
I will not remember this feedback to the degree that I need to, or be able to have the conversation for follow-up questions that it deserves right now.
And it will distract me from something else that's important right now that I
Yes.
need to be doing.
Right. Like, so if that might even be, if I'm talking to you and say like, "Hey, how did I do up on stage?" I'm literally just allowing a group of people to like have a bathroom break and then I'm going back up there. Is there something I need to change that for my next set? Or is it something that I might want to consider this for a contractual issue in the future?
Right.
Like, I don't need the contractual issue buzzing around in my brain as I'm about to step on stage or as if I'm playing a game. Is it something that I can fix in my game in the next 30 seconds before I go back out on the field? If it's not, then don't give me that feedback right then and there. It's not
Mhm.
helpful. Now I'm just gonna be ruminating on it, and it's not gonna do the thing that it should.
Mhm.
And I think that also then makes me wonder when it comes to that timing, so who do we get feedback from that we care enough? Because there are a lot of people that wanna give feedback to our life. So, what do we do? And maybe this is a bigger discussion when it comes to getting feedback, but when we're giving feedback, how do we decide if we're the person to give it?
Mm. I don't clearly I don't have the answer to it, but a couple of thoughts that jumped into my mind is number 1, am I in tune enough to reading the room,
Mhm.
right? To and mindfully pausing a little bit, right?
Mhm.
Like mindfully pausing to say, am I the right person? Is this the right time? Is this the right place? Asking myself that,
Mhm.
right?
Yes.
And then the follow-up to that is something you and I have talked about before, and we talked about it last night, Amy, when we were at a show, but I can't remember. I feel like someone different said it. We talked about you know what it was? I think I was listening to a podcast on my way down yesterday, right? I was listening to Brené Brown and Adam Grant and Simon Sinek, and I think it was them that talked about what you use all the time. Who do you need me to be right
Mhm.
now? So if you're coming to me with a scenario, a problem, a story, sometimes you're coming to me because I want your immediate feedback. I want your thoughts about it. But sometimes I just need you to listen. And sometimes I need you to hug me, right?
Yeah.
And just empathize with me. And then sometimes that changes, right?
Mhm.
Like if you're open and your mindset is just in that curious state and you ask, right? That question of and you ask, who do you need me to be right now? That can change, right? Like
Okay.
like right now I need you to be quiet and just listen
Mhm.
and be there for me so I can vent. And then you do that. Like if you can listen and hold it in and do that, which is not always easy, you can ask the question again at the end. Is that all you need from me still? Or do you need anything else? Right? And that's how I'm remembering that it was Brené Brown because I think she was talking about different sisters calling her and saying, I'm gonna tell you this thing and then I'm gonna hang up. And I don't want you to answer back until tomorrow, kind of thing. Our favorite word, curiosity, it
Mhm.
almost always comes up, but I just feel like sometimes that's where there's the magic in asking ourselves the question too. Am I hearing what I think I'm hearing? Or do they want something from me? Or is this the right time? Even just pausing to ask ourselves that question can make our ability to offer feedback more valuable.
Yeah, I think that it absolutely can. It also makes me wonder, and this is something that I had a conversation with someone and we were talking about kind of the when to give feedback. And we were talking about work culture. And if you are someone's coworker and you have a vested interest in them succeeding and they are doing something that is causing other people to talk, if it's given information with the best intention, is that okay? Or do you hold your tongue because you are not their supervisor? Or do you lean in with curiosity of I've noticed X happening. Is there anything I can help answer for you?
Right. Asking the question again.
Right,
Yeah.
right. That, that you're new here or, as a more senior longevity, but like when is that appropriate time of again, if we're not in a relationship where it's assumed I would be giving you feedback,
Hmm.
but I am also concerned because I see you doing something that goes against company culture,
Mhm.
do I call it out or do I not? Like,
Yeah.
is it kind? Because I always say, like, clarity is kindness, you know? But I think this is a gray area that I just kind of wonder, like, what are we when we even though we have the other person's best interest, or we believe we have the other person's best interest in mind, is it our place?
Do you think that there's an answer to that? I mean, you know how sometimes people come in with a they want the formula, right?
Right.
Like we work with teachers and they're like, we have these behavior problems, just tell us what to do. Every child's a unique human being with a unique life circumstance and all the pieces. There is no exact formula, right? I wonder if while there's not, probably not an answer, a
Right.
direct answer, that it still might be, are you the kind of person who is investing in building relationships with your colleagues, with your coworkers? And while they might not be your direct report, through that relationship building, which means you have to do the work, a lot of work,
Mhm.
right? If it matters to you to give that feedback, you probably have different relationships with each person,
Mhm.
and it won't take long to figure out who doesn't wanna hear your advice or your feedback, and that might come from you trying a few times. Then when you have those coworkers who you do have those relationships with and they know you have their best interests at heart, that you could ask that question. I noticed something, I have a thought that I'd love to share with you, but let me know if you wanna hear it. If not, I'm fine with that, but some people will take that
But okay,
easier than others.
they will, and I will also say too, as the person giving that, do you mean it? Like, because the thing is too, like,
You have
right,
to be focused on a good
you
relationship.
do, and also if you want the feedback, I'm here to give it to you. If you don't, we'll never talk about it again.
Yeah. Do you mean that?
Do you actually mean that? Like, I'm thinking of every stereotypical mother-in-law. Like, like visual, and luckily I'm not saying this, but like I think of every movie, that where it's like the good intentioned mother's like, I never have to give you the feedback, and then it's like they're dying
Well,
inside.
or it's coming out in other
Passive
conversations.
aggressive,
Oh, yeah,
right. I've told
yeah,
the entire
yeah.
family, like type of
I mean, and I just think that's where for our conversation right now, we can only speak for who we wanna be, right?
correct.
Right? And who you want to be for others and who you want to be as a person and for yourself. And yeah, the stereotypical mother-in-law exists and
Mhm.
people are out there that are passive aggressive and this conversation probably just won't help them. So,
Right. But thinking along those lines, I think something that we're kind of looking at as we're kind of getting ready to wrap up with it, I think kind of taking it everywhere that we've gone is putting before we give feedback, put ourselves in check. Like, is now the right time for me to be giving feedback? Am I neutral to the situation? Or because I think this is something too. You had mentioned being crabby, but also am I heated? Is this a situation where like maybe I'm too passionately involved in the situation so that the feedback I'm going to give is going to come out in a way that is not like it was interesting. I was having a conversation with Jeremy the other day, and he was asked for feedback on a specific situation. And he realized that he gave the feedback after he was asked, and he didn't really want to do it, but he did it anyway. And it put him in a mood for the rest of the day. And we kind of talked about like at what point in life, even when you're asked for feedback, is it appropriate to say, I don't think I'm the person you want to ask because I have too many feelings about that I can't give you
mhm,
constructive
mhm.
feedback to help you make that decision. I can only kind of taint your thought with my
Yeah.
negativity because and being
Yeah.
self-aware like
Yeah.
that.
Yeah, it's a lot of internal work. You're totally reminding me of sometimes where I've had to just make the decision that I am not. Even though I have thoughts about something, I'm right. So there's times when we're the supervisor. We have to give the feedback. It's expected, it's required if our organization is going to work, if our family's going to work, if whatever it is going to work. We have to sometimes just do it as best as we can, but we have to do it. I'm going to use this example of, as a professor, I have literally created certain courses at the institution, and they feel like your baby, right? Like you've invested so much in creating this course, which also typically means you've taught it a lot or exclusively sometimes. And there I'm picturing a scenario where I was ready to step away from a class and it needed to be updated. It needed to be redone. And I very willingly said, I'm stepping away. Who would like to? And someone took that up. And then we were doing a working retreat and having conversations about what that class needed to do, right? It needed to do its role within the curriculum. So our students left the university with certain things. And I might have said a bit too much. I'm like, but you have to remember, you have to remember, while yes, you have this passion and focus on this, let's say, age group, you can't forget this other age group that people are only focusing on that are taking this class. And quite shortly thereafter, that person was in tears and felt like I had, wasn't really giving it up. And I had to really think about that. Like I have this passion and need to make sure certain things happen, but I gave it up.
Mhm.
Right. I gave it up. I said I would walk away. And I've had to build that skill of take it.
You're reminding me, so a couple years ago, I did an adaptive schools I participated in an adaptive schools training, and for any listener, if you're ever looking for an amazing training, adaptive schools is really it, and it was all about how to lead effective meetings and group work and all of this type of stuff. One of the key takeaways I have, and I use this all the time, it was when you put an idea on the table, you don't get to climb up there with it.
Mm.
So only give an idea that can be modified to the group, that can be
Mhm.
modified by the group. If it is your idea that you want to see happen in its entirety, it is not for group consumption, it's for your consumption, and you get to choose
Mhm.
then how it's played out.
Yeah.
But if you are approaching a group with an idea and you are giving it, you are giving it. Like it is then able to be shredded, modified, a piece of it, none of it used, but you are gifted. And actually really you're gifting it.
Yeah.
And so if you can't gift your idea, then
Yeah.
don't climb up there with it.
Yeah.
It
I
and
love that.
yeah, and it really stuck with me. And there have been ideas then that I have said, okay, you know what? In my head, no, to me, this needs to be done in this way,
Mhm.
and this is my shot, and if I give it to them in the way that things are currently looking, I can't use it again later, and so I'm not
Mhm.
gonna do that.
Mhm.
But then there have been other times that I have had something pop into my mind, and I'm like, "Yeah, that could be a really effective way to do it." But if somebody else comes along and totally changes it up, but it was something that, like, sparked the idea for that,
Yeah. Yeah.
take it, do
Like,
it.
change my
Yeah,
mind.
yeah, do
Yeah.
it, like, I think that that's take the idea for your own. Is there something here? I almost think of it like giving somebody a dress, you know? "Hey, you have a dance, I have this dress. If you wanna go all let's go like Molly Ringwald, very old school, as we say this in Pretty in Pink," which I know it did not, or no, it wasn't. It was what the other one, at
16
that 16
candles.
no, no, it was Pretty
Oh,
in Pink. It was
okay.
Pretty in Pink, yes. Um, you know, make it into whatever you want. Take that and, modify it. But if I give you a dress and the expectation is that you're going to wear the dress exactly as is,
Mhm.
then I didn't gift it to you. I
Mhm.
loaned it to you.
Yeah.
And that is very
Yeah.
different. And so I think then as we're talking about this, when we're giving feedback, thinking about, am I gifting you this, you know, or am I giving it to you? Or am I loaning it to you? Or is there an actual expectation? Or, and I also along with that, am I giving you my opinion or am I giving you a culture fact?
Yes.
Like, am
Yes.
I like, so for example, when I kind of said earlier, like, is there a proper way to do something? Is there a proper way because there are a rule or a policy somewhere
Mhm.
that says, yes, we need to do this? Is this a standard culture? We're all in the US right now. Is this something that happens in the US? Would it be totally different? You had mentioned culture. Is it something totally different if you're in a different country? Somebody else say, like, this doesn't land with me because we give feedback somewhere totally different. So I think with that, is this my opinion of how something should be done? Because if that's the case, then maybe I need to keep my opinion to
Mhm.
myself, Like if I'm giving an opinion of, everybody's got the way they make spaghetti. And I'm like, well, spaghetti should really have a pinch of sugar and it should only be, made with real sauce and like it should have two types of meat, and somebody's like, that's spaghetti. And I opened up a jar and dumped it on some hot noodles, like those are both spaghetti, but they're two
Right.
totally different ways. So I have to think about, okay, if I was telling you how to make it, I was giving you my opinion.
Mhm.
Doesn't matter. So what am I giving you?
Mhm. I love that. So, I just finished watching the 3rd season of America's Sweethearts,
Okay.
and we talked about that a little bit
Yeah.
last night in the car. Taylor had also finished watching it, and I think Ella has seen old like, before when it was called something else for a bunch of years. Anyway, one thing that was really evident in this season is that the some of the alumni or not alumni because 'cause they're still on the team, right? So the girls who, had returned for several years, were starting there was a shift in how vocal they are to Judy and Kelly, I'll say coaches, I don't know what their official titles are, right? But they're getting more vocal than ever in the past in terms of what they need. Not just, "Yes, ma'am, I'll do whatever you say," but also, "If you see something good from us, we need you to tell us. We know you're gonna keep telling us what we have to fix." And it is one of those scenarios, right, where they're coaching a team and things need to be very precise and look certain ways. And in that conversation we had, in the past, they were much more, I guess I'm gonna use the word harsh about, giving the negatives and what they had to fix. And it was really very visible in this season that they were listening a bit to feedback they were receiving about how to give feedback, right? So they still said some things that make me cringe, right?
Mhm.
But probably it's necessary.
Right.
But you could see them thinking more about, well, if we're going to eventually cut this person, do we drag it along or do we just rip the Band-Aid off right now? Or, the girl said, "We see you talking in your phone. You're making notes in your phone, but we never know what you're saying. And so it lives in our head about what it could be. Are there opportunities for you to tell us a bit more about what that is?" And you'd see Kelly say, "Well, in my phone it says." And so it was interesting to watch on this reality TV show,
Right.
right? But while that style of feedback might still be uncomfortable for me, it was very evident that they were trying to change how they gave feedback based on what they were hearing. So that was just an interesting dynamic that I saw in something I was watching on TV and thought, wow, what a perfect way to bring that into, to this idea of giving feedback and what that could look like. I'm looking forward to our conversation about receiving feedback.
I am too. Yes. So I think that feels like a pretty good segue. And so let's take a pause here for giving feedback and let's pick back up next week with getting feedback.
I'm ready for it.
Thanks for tuning in to This Was Supposed to Be Easy. Remember, the best stories are the ones we live.
Don't forget to like, subscribe, and keep the conversation going because life may not be easy, but listening in should be.
Stay curious, stay connected, and keep wondering.